All right, where should we start? Should we start introducing ourselves?
Yeah, sure.
Hi.
Don't you go first? Okay,
Okay.
go
Hi,
ahead.
I'm
No,
Mom.
I insist. Please go ahead.
Okay. Hi, I'm Mom, otherwise known as Minna Jung. I am the mom in this podcast. And welcome to our podcast. Eric, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Eric. I'm the son of Minna and David.
You want to bring him in
Um,
there?
that'd be cool. Um, and yeah, I am become death, destroyer of worlds. Sorry. I'm just kidding. Yeah, and I love film, and I like talking about film, especially with my lovely mother. So that's what we're here to do.
Yeah, I like talking about film with you. So, what are we going to talk
Oh,
about today? We are talking about the big summer tentpole film event, which we have both achieved, Barbie and Oppenheimer. So that's our topic for today. We're going to try to do our best during each podcast episode to stick to movies, but occasionally we may take a side road and talk about life and other pop culture topics. So just wanted to let our zero listeners know that.
hey, you don't know yet.
Yeah,
This will
well,
be
who knows?
huge,
We might have
probably.
one or two. That's right. Anyway, all right, so let's get started. So let's talk about Barbie Oppenheimer. Barbie Oppenheimer. Barbenheimer. Was that the port?
Barbenheimer.
Yeah, Barbenheimer.
I mean, some people will argue that if you do Oppenheimer and then Barbie, it could be Oppenby,
Oh,
but it's
Oppenby.
not as catchy. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Just-
we're only going to talk during this podcast about movies that both of us have seen. Sometimes they're going to be rewatches, but this one was a target. So you were already planning to do the double feature of Barbie and Oppenheimer, which you did on the opening weekend. And then during the following week, I did not do it as a double feature, but I did it Barbie on a Monday, Oppenheimer on a Friday. So it was a lot for me. I was pretty exhausted. So let's first talk about the double feature aspect of this. It became a thing. It was a thing for everybody to do this as a double feature. And most people, I think, opted to do it in the order that you did it in, which was to do Barbie first and then Oppenheimer. So was that ever a question for you, by the way, in which order to do it, or was that just the natural order?
well, it wasn't my idea. My friends just hit me up saying like, "Hey, we're gonna see Barbie and Oppenheimer together." So I was like, "Yeah." And I thought about it, but they already got the tickets. It was Barbie then Oppenheimer.
So they
But
planned it.
after, yeah, yeah. So I was, and I just got A list, so it was like a A list entourage thing.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so we went and saw both back to back. We saw Barbie at 7, and then that ended around like 9:30, and then we saw Oppenheimer. So we came out of the theater around like 1. Um,
So
but it
why did
was
you choose to do it so packed together? Because did you want to make it that's just how your friends decided to do it? Like there's no break in between,
well, I
no
mean,
rest for the weary, so to speak.
what were we gonna do for like an hour in the theater? Like, I
Okay.
mean, we could sit at the bar that nobody sits at. But yeah, we went.
I
So
want to tell
we got
everybody
our
that my son is newly 21. He is legal to
oh
drink
wow,
and hang out in the bar. So
thanks.
just wanted to
Yeah,
insert that in
I think I
there.
was advertising like just okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, we had a little break. Obviously, we went right after Barbie. We went to the concessions and got some snacks and stuff.
Yeah.
And while we were waiting in line too, we saw people coming out of Oppenheimer, and just their faces were just like painting red, like world is ending. So honestly, when I saw that, I thought we probably chose the right thing because. I mean, some people will say, they went to Oppenheimer first and then,
I don't know how.
Barbie just to have just to lighten the mood. But I don't see how you could do that coming out of Oppenheimer. It was so devastating. But yeah, I mean, I think it ended up working out pretty good.
Are you glad you did it that way?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I did walk out, at 1 a.m. exhausted, thinking, "Man, the world is just over." But you know what? It was. I thought it was worth it. It seemed fitting.
Yeah.
You see Barbie when it's still light in the day, and then Oppenheimer when it's pitch black outside.
What mood were you in when you exited Barbie?
Oh, I was elated. It was just so funny. And I felt giddy. I was like, that was a great movie. Can't wait to go into this next one feeling just as great. Like the first scene is Oppenheimer trying to poison his teacher. Like, yeah, that was the mood we were going for.
Well, you know how we always talk about this, how some how movies make you feel, like how what state they leave you in. So you actually did you feel energized by Barbie? Like you felt like your fuel tank was replenished, or were you just like in the right state of mind?
I think I was just in the right state of mind. I wasn't. I mean, because it didn't fully. I thought it was a great movie and I loved it, but it wasn't one of those movies that I'm gonna, that's gonna stay with me forever. I think, and that's just me personally. But it just put me in a good state of mind, and I was like, that was a good movie. Can't wait to see the next one.
Good.
Yeah.
All right. So I will just say that after I saw Barbie, I saw it in the middle of the day. I saw both in the middle of the day. I saw both matinees. Barbie, I felt like I had just, I don't know, it was just like dandelion fluff. It was lighthearted and I laughed at certain parts, but I was in a positive frame of mind, but there was a little part of me that was like meh. And so we'll go on to talk about the individual movies later and what we thought about them. But that was sort of my state of mind exiting Barbie. Oppenheimer definitely approached it like a little bit of a chore because I knew I wanted to get this first episode recorded. Not sure how, what the impetus would have been for me to see it sooner rather than later. But because, if we didn't have this podcast, I'm not sure I would have hustled to go see it in the theater. But
It didn't seem like your type of movie.
No,
Really.
I know you and Dad are always saying stuff like that.
I
That's
thought
not
you
your
were
type of
gonna hate it,
movie. So
They're gonna hate it.
yeah, we'll talk about how I felt about it, but later. But I will just say that I am glad that I saw it in the theater, and I'm really glad that I didn't try to do the double feature. No way would I have made it out. I was so exhausted just by seeing it on its own day. Like I walked out and I just felt so just wrung out. Just so so many things to think about. There's so many things to think about, and also to be reminded of history in that really visceral way was just really, it was a lot to take in. It's not in any, by any definition, a light movie. So that's what I'll say about. So, but I did see it I guess for me, seeing it on a Monday and a Friday is the 21-year-old's equivalent of seeing it as a double feature. Like that's if there was like a stamina scale, that's where it would be. Like we would both be on the same stamina scale. So anyway, huge props to you though. I will say I was super impressed that you did it. I was also really impressed when I looked at your letterboxd ratings the next day that you liked both of them too. Like that seeing them in the same day didn't actually affect your capacity to judge one or the other on their own merits. But it's interesting. Like I wonder for some people whether or not seeing them as a double feature affected their perception one or the other. So yeah. How we're always talking about how the crowd that you see a movie with really affects, and so I also think that like seeing things in a tail like that, that's a lot too. So that's my take on the double feature.
Yeah, totally. And I was surprised too, because I mean, I didn't think it would work at all. I didn't think I would like either movie.
You went in with low expectations.
I did, yeah, because the trailers didn't really seem appealing to me at all.
That's interesting.
And you know what? I think the event of it being a double feature made it more exciting, and also it was towards opening weekend, so it was everybody was excited. The Barbie theater was packed.
Yeah,
people were filling the front row seats.
Yeah, mine too, and it was a Monday afternoon. Yeah. So let's talk about the movies. So let's talk about Barbie first. And I think that you and I talked about this ahead of time. We both went into this with medium to low expectations. So, and I thought that it was funny what you said about the trailers didn't excite you, because I went into Barbie really thinking that I loved the trailer. I thought it was hilarious. And I had that worry about the trailer that I do about all comedy trailers, that I think, they put all the best bits they put all the funniest bits or all the jokes in the trailer. But why don't you talk a little bit more about, is it just because of the trailer that you had medium or low expectations? Or was it just that the topic didn't appeal to you? What was it that dampened your expectations of Barbie?
Well, I guess it was mostly just that they were making a Barbie movie, like in general, like
Yeah.
that was the premise. And just from what they showed in the trailer, I just thought it was going to be like a cash grab kind of movie. Like everybody knows Barbie, and everybody's gonna go see Barbie movie because everybody knows Barbie, and it's not really gonna be much more than that. And I think the trailer, I thought the trailer was the sort of flat look of the movie
Mm-hmm.
in a way, like, and you know, they had all these big name actors. All these studios like to just put every A-list actor they can find to just make it seem like it's going to be great. So all of that together just made me think, I don't know, like maybe it's going to be good, who knows. So to my surprise, when I actually watched it, it was just really, really funny, and it was way more enjoyable than I thought it was going to be. And also it had more of a message than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was just going to be, your typical sort of lame story. I thought they were going to do more. If I thought they were going to focus way too much on, the mother and daughter type of thing.
Yeah.
But they actually delivered, something that I thought was, meaningful and important.
Yeah. So I sort of agree with you on some of those points, but
Yeah.
I will say that the more time that elapses that I'm out from seeing Barbie, the less impressed I am by it. So I definitely thought that it was an enjoyable film to watch, and it was. So I should probably step back and say I had lots of Barbies growing up. And I not only had lots of Barbies, but we had all the paraphernalia too. So, your aunt and I, we had the Barbie camper. And one of my biggest Christmas presents was the Barbie townhouse. So this was a multiple story townhouse that had an elevator that you could run, and it was so cool. So yeah, and so they actually put it together, and I remember coming down, finding it next to the Christmas tree, and it was already assembled. So it was as tall as I was. So excited to have an elevator. I don't know why the elevator was like the height of luxury for a Barbie. I don't remember thinking anything consciously of Barbie other than it was really fun to play with her different outfits. And I had a babysitter one summer who could actually sew like custom make outfits for Barbie. So it was like a fashion thing for me. It wasn't like a symbol of anything. I didn't question why her feet were were tilted like that, or I didn't question why she had sort of this super stick thin body with boobs. So none of that so I had no idea what Greta Gerwig was going to do with this concept. And there is a part of me that admires what she did with this concept. Like, I think she took a big swing at many different concepts. So I think she took a swing at patriarchy. There's self-actualization. There's identity issues. There's gender equality. There's all kinds of, mother-daughter. There's just so many themes that she took a swing at. And I think that my issues with the film, number one, have to do with, I don't know why, but Greta Gerwig just bugs me. She just bugs me. There's a, I don't know why, but for some reason she comes off as smug and complacent. And I'm sure maybe she's not like that in real life, but she's just like, she just has this air of, I just really make important movies, and I believe in myself, and I make important movies. And I think that some things about the movie were great, like the production design was amazing. But I don't think it was a perfect movie. I don't think all of the themes were fully explored. I think it tried to do too much, and then some of the themes, the way that they played out, the only word that comes to mind is it's kind of basic. It was basic, in some ways. So that was my general feeling about this. Well, you and I also saw Little Women together. And have you seen Lady Bird too?
No, not yet. I'm still meaning to watch it.
Yeah, I mean, how can I say this? Little Women and Lady Bird and also Barbie, all Greta Gerwig movies, they all have these people talking about, these are such great movies. They're so amazing. They're so incredible in terms of how they portray relationships and teenage life and coming of age stories and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I've seen this before. I mean, I've seen all of these before. And the only thing that Greta Gerwig really changes is the setting. So it's almost like she explores the similar themes, but she just changes the setting. And then she puts a lot of production design and thoughtfulness into the production design. So the setting really is powerful. But at the same time, just because like she does an amazing job with the setting and the design and the look and feel of her films, that doesn't actually mean that the themes are explored in any kind of profound or interesting way to me. That's the thing. That's what I really think about Barbie. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I actually don't even know what Greta Gerwig looks like, if I'm being honest. I haven't
You
seen
don't?
any.
That's so
No,
funny.
I haven't. I should have maybe studied up for this. But
She's this large, placid, blonde woman.
Oh, okay. Well, great. Now
She's
I can
tall
envision
and
that
she's
perfectly.
statuesque and she's got blonde hair and big eyes. And
Perfect. Yeah.
and she talks like a typical like I love my Barbie. Like she talks
Mm,
like well, she has that sort of she has what I think of in my head, which might not be fair, but this is what I think of. She has that sort of privileged white woman thing in her head,
mm,
voice that she's got that down. It's very stereotypical that way.
right. Well, anyways,
Sorry, that
so
was a lot. I know that was a
so
lot. I have a lot of feelings about Greta Gerwig.
that's great, and I think that's great. I just, I went into this movie only having seen Little Women, so that's the only movie I've seen from her. So I kind of came in sort of unbiased. I feel like you came in a little bit with like, oh, I'm expecting this is going to be another Greta Gerwig, movie that and does that sort of, would you say that really affected your enjoyment?
I don't know, actually. I mean, I agree with you that I am biased about Greta Gerwig, and I have all these, um, preconceived notions about her.
I mean, yeah,
Well,
sorry.
part of the thing is I also get hung up on celebrity gossip. So I'm obviously, as you know, very conversant with celebrity gossip. So I
Hmm.
know that Greta Gerwig and Noah Baumbach are partners in real life. They co-wrote this film. He's a pretty well-known filmmaker. He was with Sandra Oh, I feel like. Maybe that's Alexander Payne. I might be getting my indie film directors mixed up. But either way, Noah Baumbach makes the same. His films have the same. I think he made Squid and the Whale, if I'm not mistaken, and Greenberg. But anyway, he has the same type of preciousness about his films that I feel like Greta Gerwig has. Like everybody treats it as these important theses, and they're not that important. They're just not. They're slice of
So
life films.
something I would counter to that is, because you said that you've seen these before, these themes of coming of age and
Yeah.
um, stuff like that. But wouldn't you argue that it's more prevalent, or Greta Gerwig is more prevalent now because she's a female director and has mostly female casts, and that's kind of one of the main draws is that she can do these kinds of things like decent, if not great, but she can at least make it like a digestible, good film. And but she's also a female director, which there haven't been many propped up female directors.
Yeah, I guess I think Greta Gerwig is talented in terms of being able to do films like this. So let me just say unequivocally, I think she makes decent films. I think that Lady Bird and Little Women and Barbie are all decent to good films. I just don't know what the universe is of female directors who are as talented or more talented as Greta Gerwig and doesn't have her advantages, and doesn't have her sort of privilege. I don't know what their potential is. Like, I don't know what the number would be, whether or not people could make much, much better films or equally good films as she could, But she just makes these, she makes these great little films. I mean, I'm not saying she shouldn't be a director. I'm not saying she shouldn't have her shot. I'm just saying that I don't think that her films are as important as people make out to be. That's my feeling. They're
Right.
okay. They're okay. And I think it's okay. Like, I read books in the same way, as you know. There are books that I read where I think to myself, this author is just a fucking genius. Like, they have so much light in their soul. They have so much genius burning. I am astonished by their art. But then I read a whole bunch of books in the middle level where I think, this writer is pretty good, and I really enjoyed that experience. And I don't think it was profound, but I really enjoyed passing the time with this book. And I respect to this author for being able to churn out this many. That middle ground, that's where I feel Greta Gerwig belongs. And, they're talking about her, like, maybe this will win an Academy Award, maybe this will, and I'm like, no. No. No, I don't think so. But maybe it should win an Academy Award because it's such a rare, thing to have a female director direct a film that is both commercially successful and takes a swing at these types of themes. So, yes.
Yeah,
but
that makes sense.
I do think the movie was good. I thought that Ryan Gosling's performance was inspired. And I also have a lot of respect for Margot Robbie, because across films that are okay or, considered really good, she was in Babylon, correct?
Yeah.
I haven't seen her in all of her films, but in the films that I have seen her in, she has presence. Like, even when she's not given much to do, even when she's being completely objectified by the camera, despite any of those things, I don't know, I think she's really, really talented. And I thought that she was really good in this role. I mean, as stereotypical Barbie, I think that I think she's a hell of an actor. So that's my feeling about Margot Robbie. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought all the actors were great. And I've only seen Margot Robbie. I've seen Margot Robbie in Babylon, and I never have a problem with her acting in any movie she's in. It's always whatever the movie's about. Babylon was just like, the movie starts off with an elephant shitting in your face, so I kind of just. But
we saw her in Suicide Squad too.
Oh right, the Suicide Squad and Birds of Prey, both of which I hated, but actually the new one was decent, but those were fine. But yeah, I always thought she was pretty good as Harley Quinn. But yeah, and then Ryan Gosling was great. When he yells like "Sublime," it was so funny. And I think it's so funny that he comes back from the real world and creates his own world. Everybody's commenting on the what is it, Mojo Dojo Casa House, I think it's called.
Casa means house.
Great. Yeah. Also, I really appreciated seeing some familiar faces from like Sex Education.
Oh yeah.
Actors. Emma Mackey was in there, which which she was only in because she looked like Margot Robbie, which I never made that connection ever. But people said that she looked like Margot Robbie, so that's why she was in the movie.
I didn't know that either.
Which is weird. Yeah, but they all played a great part. I do sort of take issue with the fact that there's only one Asian guy, and it's Simu Liu, and he happens to be like the villainous, sort of Ken, like who in the beginning at least, who's like, oh, that Ken, we don't like him, So I'm just seeing this pattern of like if there is going to be, and then there's like knives in Scott Pilgrim. We just saw that like a few months ago. I kind of hate seeing that, and of course it's Simu Liu who's like under fire for being sort of not great for promoting Asian representation, or not the best, obviously. I think he's pretty good. I like Shang-Chi somewhat, but like he's not the best, and that was a little annoying, but that's like such a small gripe, but I couldn't help but notice that.
Yeah, just a side note for our 0 listeners, which is that both Eric and I were very lukewarm about Shang-Chi, but then Eric recut the final sequence to a much better score. And it improved the final sequence, the actual like thrilling climactic sequence, by 1,000%. So from Eric, I have learned much about great how great movie score contributes and how great editing contributes. So I just wanted to say that. I just wanted to put a
That's so
plug in it.
great.
Yeah, I
I
just
can't
wanted
believe you
to.
just casually mentioned that, Mom.
I've
Wow,
just
it's
learned so much from you,
untapped.
Eric.
Wow.
Okay.
I mean, hey, but it isn't that hard. That's all I'm saying. It's like they just needed, a tad bit less money for the BMW commercial part in the song sheet, and a tad bit more money for like the actual music that contributes to emotion. So,
Right.
but thank you for mentioning that. I really appreciate that. That has
Yeah.
nothing to do with
Maybe we'll
editing,
take
but
that up again in the future.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
In the future. All right. So getting back to
That'd be
Barbie, and
great.
we'll wrap this up soon. I did want to say in terms of I was going to say something about the performances. What was I going to say about about the humor? I do think that the jokes about the patriarchy really depended on where you were in your knowledge about toxic masculinity and patriarchy and gender
Right.
equality. So for a 6-year-old, I saw this in a tweet. A 6-year-old might be like, "What's the patriarchy?" And there the door opens, right? And then, but for somebody who's my age maybe and has been exposed to more feminist theory, it might be
Mm.
a little bit more. Might be a little bit more basic. I know that word keeps on coming up. However, I will just
And
say
yeah.
the
Well, then
funny
for a right wing, Ben Shapiro watching Buffoon,
threatening,
that's on the opposite side of the spectrum,
right?
knows like negative of like what the patriarchy is. It's a whole different experience, also.
Correct. So anyway, I will just say though that the entire sequence about the Barbies, getting their um, identities
Freedom.
back and then infiltrating and pretending to be ensnared.
I
I
love The Godfather.
I know that was the Godfather joke made me snicker out loud. I mean, I actually just laughed, and every time I think about it, I laugh. And it goes into this whole, I have a million theories about a million things, and I actually love The Godfather. I almost know that book by heart, and I've seen the movie multiple times. But there's this whole thing about boy movies and boy books and girl movies and girl books. And I feel like The Godfather is one of those. It's one of those movies. It was just that joke was so funny because it is one of those movies that guys want to explain to you or why they think it's the greatest movie ever. There are all kinds of, and so this is. I said this one time when I was in a spin class. My spin instructor said, "I'm so excited about seeing Dunkirk." Whatever, isn't that a Christopher Nolan film? He's like, "I'm so
Yeah.
excited about seeing Dunkirk. I've been looking forward to this movie." And I was like, "Of course you are." And he goes, "What do you mean? Of course I am." I said, "That's a boy movie, and you're really excited in a boy way about seeing that
War,
boy movie."
shooting,
Yeah,
space.
exactly.
Oh,
I also love
oh
World
yeah.
War II. That's so funny. That was World War One. But anyway, it was World War II or World War One. Dunkirk. I think it's World War One.
Two, I think.
Two. You're probably
There's
right. Two.
planes.
There's planes.
Planes.
Were there planes in World War One?
Actually, I don't know. Don't fact check me.
We have to look up now when the
Sorry.
Wright brothers invented aeroplane. So we've summed it up, right? Do you want to just sum up? So Barbie, I'll sum up and say I thought it was a good film. Have issues with Greta Gerwig, and I don't think that it's as important as everyone makes it out to be. But I'm happy for
Yeah.
her, I guess. Uh, and what
I
about you?
mean,
Sum up?
yeah. I mean, the last thing I'll say, I mean, because I didn't think it was perfect. I really, had an enjoyable experience. I was laughing out loud in the theater. I think everybody heard me. But I guess where it sort of maybe lost me a little bit was towards the end. It felt like, when she was having that conversation with the creator of Barbie, it just sort of it felt like it lulled a little bit. Like, I didn't really need to. I was more, what is Barbie gonna do now? And I think what they were talking about was interesting. And so I don't want to undercut that scene, but it was just like what's going. And then they cut to like old archive footage of just women doing things, which is cool. But also sort of, I guess it connects to the thing of like because the memories were what attached to the Barbies. So that's why she was seeing the memories of the mother and daughter. But it didn't seem like they really were going into that very
Hmm.
much, so they didn't really need to show that at the end again. I don't
Yeah.
know it. But this song was really nice. I really did. I mean, I think Billie Eilish was pretty good. But and it was a great setup for that last I'm here to see a gynecologist joke. Like, I think that was funny. But it just wasn't like enough to push me over the edge of like, oh, this is just like the best film ever
Yeah.
made. So that was probably my only issue with it. But other than that, I just thought it was really well done and smart and funny.
Yeah. Oh, good. I'm glad. I'm glad actually because you and I have had that long running joke about how you don't like female directors or you don't like female director things.
Listen, okay, I'm trying out here.
It's a joke, and it only came about because of Wonder Woman, the first Wonder Woman. But we agree that the second one was terrible. So nice face. Oh my god, that's really horrible. Oh, I just want to wait.
So
I know.
yeah.
I don't believe that for a second. That's why I just like to tease you about it. You know that.
What do you do? Mom, how could you?
Okay.
I care about women.
One last thing. I do think the dialogue was weird at some points, where the pacing was weird. Like somehow the beats were off. So sometimes the dialogue didn't have the right pattern or rhythm to it. It just felt like it was a little bit. It felt like they weren't quite sure what tone they were going for in certain dialogue scenes. That's what I will say. It's not the script itself. It was more how they were projecting. So it wasn't clear whether they were going for natural realism in the dialogue or if they were going for something a little bit more campy and exaggerated, you know? And so there was something in, so it felt airless a little bit, and it felt like it was falling flat. And I noticed this like three or four times. So again, not the fault of the script. It was more that it felt like they just hadn't committed to a tone. So
yeah, and I could see where you maybe thought that. There was that one scene where she goes to the school and talks to the kids.
Yes. Yeah.
And like, but I personally really liked that because it was I thought that was one example where it was super exaggerated. Like they were just destroying Barbie for no reason. And I think that was just a funny comment on how nihilistic, the sort of younger generations are nowadays. Like if you notice, all the kids in the school were wearing like black or like dark clothes, as opposed to Barbie, who's in this ridiculous outfit. And I thought like just it being that blatant, even if it sounded really cringe, sometimes that girl, when she was being like, ugh, I hate the world, like it was being too cringe. But for that scene, I thought it was pretty funny, and I was really sad when she was just kind of being berated by these girls. Like she just wants to be Barbie. Like
I felt sad too, actually. I did feel sorry for Barbie.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go to Oppenheimer, which I'm just going to introduce in an antidote to its tone because it's a grim, serious, important movie. So,
and to preface, my mom, you love Christopher Nolan. Christopher Nolan's probably one of your favorite directors.
All right,
in the country.
All right, that's really funny. Right? That's really funny. Okay, so why don't you start with how you feel about Christopher Nolan?
I think he's a film guy. He's like really, I love film, and I think that's cool. I think where some people get lazy with certain aspects of their filmmaking, he does not, and he will never be lazy. So he'll always make sure that his script is written to exactly how he wants it to be. It's shot exactly how he wants it to be. And everything, it's made to be like a huge blockbuster event, which I think is pretty crazy.
I like that you went first because there are some there. I'd like that you went first because there are times when and you're one of the very few people that I feel this way about. There are times when I feel like your opinion is actually, it sums it up better than I could have. So I actually think that from the craft perspective, I agree with you. He is completely meticulous about his craft as a filmmaker. Mm-hmm. So please continue.
Well, I mean, where he sort of disconnects for me is you've said this a lot, but it's his stories become very convoluted. To the point where you can't really follow everything that's going on, and you can't fully grasp like what the whole point of the movie is. Some movies are worse. I mean, I've heard Tenet is worse. I haven't seen Tenet, but I've heard Tenet is worse in this aspect. And to some degree, Oppenheimer was sort of getting there in the beginning for me, because I was like, "What the fuck is going on right now?" They're cutting. It's black and white, and then it's not, and then they're talking to this guy, and then they're not. Um, but then it all matters if he can sum it up in the end and make it make sense. Inception is a great example. Like, I think they were going through that whole plan of how they were gonna attack this part of this guy's mind and stuff. I actually had no clue what was going on. But at the end of the day, I was like, yeah, that's crazy that they did that. And like they just kept going into the specifics, like what time they need to like do this, and like where they're gonna be, all, and
what the rules are for the different levels.
Yeah, and Christopher Nolan loves playing with the timing of stuff. Like, you see things before they happen, or he cuts scenes together very, very interestingly. But it just made me lose sight of what the hell they were doing. But at the end, it was a really you understand what the story was actually about. And it was I thought it was a good ending. But I've only seen it once. So.
Yeah, I mean the convoluted. I mean, we should talk about this a little bit. We should unpack this a little bit, because the convoluted thing, it's when it gets in the way, so that I mean, what are you supposed to do? It almost is trying to force you to admire the intricacy rather than be lost in the story or be lost in any kind of feelings, and so that sense of losing yourself in the film is not there sometimes because you're so lost in all the layers and the intricacies. And so part of your brain is trying to figure out what the hell just happened or what's going on right now. And I haven't figured out the rules yet about how these different levels work or this different time.
Right.
Thank goodness that Oppenheimer was not that complicated in terms of its time. So you knew that you were at the Strauss hearing, you knew that you were at his hearing, and then you were part of making the bomb, right? Like that. Those are the lead up to making the bomb. So thank goodness that there were only 3 timelines, but it's almost like he can't help himself when it comes to being convoluted. And I have to say, I did not feel anything during Inception. I thought that it was cool. I thought Interstellar was cool, but I actually didn't feel anything. So if, as a filmmaker, Christopher Nolan would like his audiences to feel something, then I think he gets in his own way. Like I just think he gets in his own. Sometimes you just want the action or the plot to pause or to take a breath so that you can let emotions wash over you or really just feel them. And that's where a really good score kicks in, because that's where like the score just matches what you're feeling at that sec, or it augments it. But in Christopher Nolan's case, the left side of your brain, or maybe it's the right side, but I think it's the left side, it's just so busy figuring out what the hell just happened that you're thinking, okay, I don't have time to feel shocked or awed or astonished because I'm just still trying to catch up. Like I'm still trying to catch up. It's almost like being a runner and not being able to focus on your technique because you're like constantly like panting to catch up. Like you can't think, I can't enjoy the scenery. I can't do this, blah, 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 because I'm just so lost.
Yeah.
But that being said, about Christopher Nolan, and I haven't seen Tenet either. And I liked the Dark Knight series. I wouldn't say that it's not a religion for me like it is for some DC fanboys, but I like the Dark Knight series. And a lot of that has to do with Christian Bale as Batman. I will just say that Oppenheimer, I had the feeling it was a pretty absorbing 3 hours. I occasionally felt like it was running long. And I know you didn't, so we'll talk about that in a bit. But it was so masterfully crafted on so many levels, like the acting, the score, the cinematography, the production design. Like there were so many things that were so meticulously well done that even though the sum of its the sum of its parts didn't quite add up for me, each part was there was just so many masterful things about it that I am left with a feeling of admiration rather than love. That's my feeling. Like I really admired Oppenheimer as a cinematic achievement. So
Yeah,
so for you, it did
that's
not
how I feel
drag.
about. Yeah, I mean, but that's also how I feel about most of his movies. They don't personally resonate with me. I love things that will make me feel emotions. But more his
I
movies are
love things that
more
will convince me I am not a robot. This is not
yeah,
enough.
yeah, and his movies are more jaw dropping spectacles. But and that's what Oppenheimer was for me. I think of the movie, I haven't seen Interstellar. I haven't seen Memento. I haven't seen some of his big ones, but so far of the ones I've seen from him, I thought this was the most compelling. And because, yeah, the 3 hours did not feel like 3 hours at all, which I thought was super interesting. And one of the things I noticed when I was watching that I usually hate in movies is like how the score never stopped playing throughout the whole movie. So every scene is just like we're building, and it contributes to this whole tension and rise up to the point where they actually set the bomb off, and then it's just complete silence. So something about how that was constructed, um, even when I didn't know all that was going on, made it super intriguing. I wanted to know more, and it was a constant buildup. Um, and what I was surprised by too, because a lot of people that I talked to said that they dropped off at a certain point, or some people even said the opposite, that the beginning was interesting, and up until after the bomb, or some people just did not give a shit about like the hearing or Strauss or anything.
Yeah.
So people like, oh my god, the bomb, yeah, the bomb sequence was amazing, it was one of the greatest things I've seen. And then it was just like, then they go back to this thing, and I'm like, what? Why do we care? Um, but I kind of had the opposite feeling, because it the part after the bomb made sense of everything that was before the bomb.
Yeah.
And because I didn't know why we were seeing the hearings really. I'll admit I'm pretty fucking stupid. Like I like kids movies, those are my favorite type of movies. Like everybody can understand what's going on, and everybody can feel happy, sad, like everybody can get it. But and I was just happy to know what was going on. Oh, I know what's going on right now. But also I just thought it was super interesting, and it was all contributing to Oppenheimer's perspective as a person in this whole fiasco.
I don't think you should apologize for liking kids' movies or call it a stupid thing or attribute it to your own stupidity. I actually think it has to do with a retention of innocence and childlike wonder that is very interesting, particularly for somebody who's going to film school. We talked about this before, how you were worried that going to film school would ruin your ability to enjoy films, and it hasn't actually. It hasn't. So you can actually dissect a lot of things about a film, and also still be caught up in it. But I don't know. I think that kids' movies, to achieve both coherent story and childlike wonder and evoke that childlike wonder, even when you're past a certain age, like when you're not a child anymore, I actually think that that's one of the hardest possible things to do. And I think that that's why people overweight movies like Oppenheimer, like, oh, this is a big historical, this is just historical, and it has such relevance for today's current events. Like, it has so many themes that are still relevant for, you know what I mean? Like, they blow it up, and part of me feels like that's true, and then part of me also thinks that it undersells the value that, for example, comedies have or kids' movies have. I've always felt this way about literature too, which is why I have still kept so many kids' books that I loved as a child, because I feel like to write a book that both appealed to a child and took them away and still reads really well when you're, I don't know, 50, in your mid 50s, like I am, I think that is massively difficult. And it's as difficult or more difficult as the person who writes a big, serious literary work that's so important and everybody will see such important things. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I just tend to be skeptical of that. But I don't think you should call yourself stupid for loving kids movies. So
Thank you, Mom. I really appreciate that.
I
Can we
know.
get?
I'm just
We're
here to.
gonna
I'm
we're
just
gonna
here.
make sure that's in the cut.
I'm just here to
We're gonna
boost
make
you,
sure that's
Eric. You
definitely
know
in the
that.
cut.
I'm your biggest cheerleader.
Thank you, Mom.
Yay!
Thank you, Mom. I really appreciate it. Yeah, but back to Oppenheimer. Yeah, and you were talking about how people, were hailing it as like a, homage to. They were thinking about history in a different light, just through Oppenheimer's perspective. And I think that people, I think that some people are stupid when they watch this movie because they think Oppenheimer is like a hero, and I think how much of that you attribute to the film, I think, is up for debate. I think definitely making Oppenheimer the main character, and main character is supposed to be sympathized with, definitely contributes to that a little bit. But also, you have to have a grasp of, you just have to have a grasp of the history and what the actual implications are. So some people, they look at these clips of Oppenheimer, like the actual Oppenheimer on archive footage, saying that famous quote, I am become death, destroyer of worlds," and he says it in this monotone, like just looking, and he's just like obviously lifeless, and it's been 20 years since the bomb, but he just looks like a lifeless person, and all the comments are like, wow, you can really see the devastation, how it affected him, and he's just so like he's destroyed as a person, because he did this horrible thing. Like, okay, listen, like, let's not. You don't need to. God, I feel so bad. Like, he did a horrible thing, obviously, and so we don't need to be all like, oh, stan Oppenheimer. Oh, Oppenheimer, daddy. Like, what? just stop. Like, literally, it's just a movie about a guy, and we get a full. We paint a full picture. Because he wasn't like a saint in that movie. He like, cheated on people. He was negligent. His wife was talking all the time about why don't you talk up for yourself, why don't you actually stand for something, and he's just like, I don't know what it is. He has his hand on his hip. He's like, I don't know, I mean, he just like looks off, and then it cuts to the next scene, obviously.
Yeah.
So that's not what it's really about. I think it's about just the whole gravity of being that person, I guess.
I think
obviously that comes with
I'm gonna stay with that phrase a little bit, the gravity of being that person, because I actually think that captures it really, really well. I think that the movie captures the person really, really well, or at least it presents him. Somebody called it I think it's hagiography. Is that how you say it? Hagiographic. A hagiographic meaning that's an idealized portrait of a historical figure, and I actually don't think it was idealized. Although people say that they could have made more, they could have shown more of his more complicated tendencies. But I think that it showed a person that with both good and bad qualities, having to reckon with a momentous decision, and not being able to think through the consequences other than what was in the moment and all the pressures. So it showed how unbearably pressurized the situation was, in terms of what Hitler was doing and Japan being in the war, and all of these different factors. And it just showed how incredibly brutal and devastating and shitty war is, period. And so,
Yeah.
and that these are the decisions that that the major actors have to make, and there's never going to be a good decision. There will never be a good decision. But I think that because that was the theme that stuck with me the most, is that there are no good answers, there are no good outcomes to a situation like this. I didn't think of him as a hero. I thought of him as somebody who was tormented, and had a lot of crappy qualities and a lot of and some good qualities as well. But most people point to that scene with Einstein at the end as the big moment, and I kind of agree with that. Actually, I think that those few lines I found when Einstein said that this is what you have from now on, like you'll just be this sort of symbol. It was that was the most profound moment of the film for me. And then the other thing I'll say about Oppenheimer is that I was, my earlier point about not being able to just feel the feels in a Christopher Nolan film. I think casting has something to do with that. Inception, I think that Leonardo DiCaprio is a really great actor, but I think he's just this total slime bag. I just think it's so gross the way that he breaks up with his girlfriends the minute they turn 24. And so I just think he's a gross old man. And so I did not give two shits whether or not he reunited with his wife or not. I just didn't care. And this one, Cillian Murphy, Dad has seen him in more things because Dad's watched Peaky Blinders, and he's seen him in other things. But I thought that Cillian Murphy did an amazing job as Oppenheimer. I thought that he was almost like this opaque surface, and then every once in a while you'd see things flicker through to the surface, and in very terse words or terse moments of dialogue or like certain actions. And I think that is probably the best way to play somebody who is essentially unknowable, and except through his biography and all the research that was done for his biography. But I thought he was amazing. I'm not sure how I feel. I'm a huge admirer of Florence Pugh, but I'm not sure how I feel about her in that role. It was a very tiny little role, and she had a lot of impact for the limited screen time. But
read the Sanskrit. Read it.
So weird. That was such a weird
Yeah, and he's like, yeah, sure.
All right.
Yeah.
It's very, very strange.
And I think Emily Blunt might be one of my top 5 favorite actresses. I just think she's so good in everything she does. And that moment where she's questioned in that closed door hearing, and she's just so fed up with the questioning, and she's so fed up with Oppenheimer, and she's so fed up with the process. She manages to convey how fed up and pissed off she is, and just like with just the tiniest of gestures, she's able to convey that. So I think that she's really, really amazing. Yeah. I think Matt Damon's great at playing those blowhard generals. He was like that in Ford versus Ferrari too.
Yeah, I think. So why I didn't think I was gonna like this movie was when I saw the trailer, it just seemed it came off as so self-important. Okay, why am I gonna want to watch a movie about the guy who made one of the worst creations on planet Earth? Why are we gonna want to learn about this or see a film about it? But it was the acting, it was the performances, and the dialogue. Because I thought it was so. In the trailer when he was like, why? Because it's the most important fucking thing to happen in the history of the world. And in the trailer I was like, okay. But in the movie it was yeah. What so he represented America's interests and all that stuff, so it was well conveyed at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I did appreciate that.
So let's talk about Robert Downey Jr. because I've read a lot of articles that say that number one, people say that this is his best performance in years. So a lot of people, I think, are implying that he got way too campy or he was wasted in the Marvel movies. So all of his sort of snarky performing, ad-libbing in the Marvel movies as Iron Man they're just sick of it. They're just sick of it. They just think it's over the top. So the praise that has been given his performance in Oppenheimer is that he's much more restrained and complex, and it's much more subtle. I actually didn't find it that much more subtle. I thought that it was Robert Downey Jr., recognizably Robert Downey Jr.
He's just being an asshole. He's good at being an asshole.
Yeah, he's good at being an asshole, right? And he's also good at, that sort of smooth, like when he says in the beginning, when he's introducing Oppenheimer, he's all very deferential, and so it was not a surprise to me at all when he turned out to be working against him at the end, because I just got it completely. I was very surprised that Rami Malek's character came out of nowhere and just decided to torpedo him. I was like, well, that's a plot twist.
Way, this guy's a shitbag. Hey, this guy right here.
This guy sucks.
I've been sitting in the back and just thinking about what I wanted to say, and let's all. And everybody's like, "What?
What?
Yeah.
He's so that yeah. So I know I felt like saying he's Tony Stark. How could you buy that for a second?
I actually because I just didn't. what I just didn't understand was his purpose in the movie. Like, it was like, I'm again, I'll say it again, but I'm stupid. I just didn't see like why what the hearing. It was about Oppenheimer, obviously, but I didn't see like what his intentions were at all or what was going on. So when they went into that whole final scene, I was like, oh, gotcha. Like that makes sense.
I think this is my hypothesis about that, his purpose. I think that it's about how, I think it's about legacy and how somebody's legacy, there's agency in shaping your own legacy. So your own actions will create your legacy of work. So
Yeah,
that's part of the equation. But then your legacy can be manipulated or changed or influenced by other actors. And so
yeah,
I think that Strauss's point in the movie was to show that Oppenheimer did what he did and he said what he said, right? And lots of people experienced him, good and bad. So there are a lot of things that he had agency and control over, but there are other things that he did not have agency and control over. And so Strauss was one of those things that he did not have agency and control over, and he was making a bid to his legacy was tarnished in a lot of ways because he wanted to be continue to be a political player. And
hmm
I think that that's why the setting for Strauss was his hearing as Secretary of Commerce. I think that was it, Secretary of Commerce, because because it's showing that he aspired above all else to be a political player, and so he would sacrifice ethics and integrity and somebody else's legacy for the sake of being a political powerhouse. And that to me captures the nature of what politics is. And actually, my favorite reviewer, Sarah, when she really called out Alden Ehrenreich's performance as his counsel and advisor in that. And I think that Alden Ehrenreich's face really showed that. It showed this disgust, like, oh, you want to do anything possible to stay or to gain power. And
yeah,
so that's what I think that theme was all about. I could just be making that up
yeah.
in my head. You know how I like to do this. I usually come up with a central theory about either a film or a filmmaker. So, like, I have a central theory about Tarantino, and I have a central theory about Steven Spielberg, and I have a central theory about everything. So, but I don't have a central theory about. We do have a central theory, it seems like, about Nolan, but in this particular case, I think that it was about legacy. All right, I'm done pontificating on
No,
that.
I mean, but on that point of legacy, you remember Harry Truman as the guy that ended the war.
Right.
Or in history, he's remembered as the guy that ended World War II by dropping the bombs. But in this movie, he's remembered as the guy that calls Oppenheimer a pussy. Like so, like that's a super interesting point of like how people are remembered, and because that's all I remember, and it's Gary Oldman. Like, where did he come from? He's just
All right, so sum up. Let's sum up what we think of Oppenheimer.
um
Did
good
you give it?
movie.
Did you give it 5 stars on Letterboxd?
I gave it 4.5.
Okay.
No like. But yeah, I think it was super well made. And I think it was compelling. I did not feel like it was 3 hours. Um, and obviously, the most climactic scenes were extremely captivating. And I was plugging my ears. I saw it in regular laser at AMC, and I'm so glad I did not see it in IMAX because it would have been so overstimulating. Like the booms, like I still had to go like this, like cover my ears, and it was so visceral. And I think the only problems or something that maybe drew it back a little bit for me was those questions of should we really be sort of making a portrait of this guy who really who has the chance of being idealized as a hero when he really shouldn't be. He should just be seen as a person, which maybe is the wrong thing. I mean, because I don't know, some people. There was a funny TikTok I saw from the guy I follow, Machino Dorito, that I show you sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
where he made it. The caption was how people want movies to be made nowadays, and it's just him like acting out a scene in Oppenheimer, and he's like, "Yeah, so what we're doing is bad, and the bad things that we're doing are really bad, and we shouldn't be doing them. but we're doing it because it's bad, and I'm a bad guy, you're a bad guy, we're all bad guys here. So like, and because people were complaining like, wow, they don't really address how devastating like the atomic, like, what are you talking about? Like, that's all it's about. So and I think that some of that discourse is what maybe just made me brought it down a little bit, just because it was like, I don't know, it's obviously another movie about a bunch of white guys like doing white guy things, war, death, destruction.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, you know how I think I gave it 4 stars on Letterboxd. Thought it was masterful. I might have given it 4.5. Thought it was incredibly well crafted. I was pretty absorbed in it. And I covered my ears. Speaking of covering my ears, I covered my ears before the test, and it was so interesting to me that he subverted expectations by making it silent, which I think might be a stroke of genius, actually.
Yeah. And I was waiting. I'm waiting. It's gonna go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, I think that he filmed it so effectively. Like, he filmed it so effectively, like showing people, rocking back and the blowback and everything like that. I thought that was really amazing. So I'd actually say that this might be, in terms of how I feel, I liked Interstellar more than I liked Inception. They're all
Inception.
Yeah, I liked Interstellar more than I liked Inception.
Yeah, two of them. All right.
And then but I like this one. I'm, as I said at the beginning of this discussion, I am filled with admiration for this film as an achievement. But I'm not sure that it would be one of my favorite films. So, because I'm not sure what I felt.
A lot of people were joking about how, best supporting actor could come down to Robert Downey Jr. or Ryan Gosling, which would be such a funny contest. I'd give it to Ken personally.
I would give it to Ken too. I thought Ryan Gosling was so committed. I thought he was so committed. All right. How do you think our first podcast episode went, Eric?
Probably pretty bad. I think this is one of the worst. I'm just kidding.
Hey!
Great. It was great. I had fun. I mean, it's just like this. All it is just talking to you about movies, which is fun. So
I know.
If it's like this.
This actually confirms.
Time, then great.
This confirms to me that we could do this all day. It's like that Captain America line. I could do this all day.
Yeah. We want this to be 30 minutes. Like.
No. I said 45.
You said 45?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, then great.
Let's try to make this 45.
But we could go on for more.
Yes, I could talk to you all day. So why don't we aim for maybe once or twice a month, and we'll talk offline about what our next movie will be, and it will not be all 3 films of The Hobbit.
Okay, I don't want you to watch all 3. I just want you to watch the first one.
Why?
Just saying.
Why?
Because it's interesting. Because I know you don't want to see it, and that would make for an interesting podcast. It's for the content. I wouldn't make you do it if you didn't. Okay. Who's the child here? Who's the mom? Okay. We'll figure it out. But I think that would be interesting. So I think you should keep that in mind.
All right. So we're going to sign off. But I just want you to know, I had a lot of fun doing this with you, Eric. And as you know, I'm just going to sign off with our usual sign off, which is I love you a ton. You're the best.
I love you, Mom.
I love you, Eric.
No, this is so fun, and I'm so glad we started this. So let's keep it going.
All right, bye. Bye.
Bye.